Seeing the prompt, Grunge Snippet Strip, has to put a small smirk on anyone's face. Hello and welcome to the Treasured Page. I'm Melanie and this is our quiet crafting space. And today I'm working in the Marianne North journal for Dephemerember. Today we're having a very grey, cold, wintry, blustery weather spell here in England on the south coast. And so I'm going to take my colour palette from the outside world, today being grey, and we're talking about grunge. So let's get prepared for that and find out. The animal today is mouse, and he's grey, so it's a grey day. It's a grey mouse day today, so let's do grey mousey, grungy, snippety strip and turn the frown upside down. Okay, let's do this. Bring on the grunge. Here's a sheet of paper from an artist sketch pad, and I've got some tissue paper that came out of the shoe box, some PVA glue, I've got a paintbrush, and then we're going to find some grey, but we don't need the grey just yet, so let's do the glue. Let's just glue. Use a bit of glue. I don't need much glue. That's plenty. And a bit of water just to dampen the page so the glue can spread about. Spread the glue everywhere. A bit like when we did the rust for the bookmark. I did something similar. I put my glue down on my paper like that. But now I want to bring in some grey colour. Iced spruce. Oh, that's better. So it's just a nice grey. Got a slight green to it. Oh, okay. Spruce. That's Christmas tree, isn't it? A spruce tree, like a pine tree. Okay. So with the oxide inks you find that they've got other colours hidden within them, so this one was green. Well, it's interesting. Let's have a bit more. Any paints, anything at all, anything that you've got that can make your gluey mixture coloured, so you could even mix it in before you start painting it on. Right, go off the edges, get everything covered. We don't really want white peeping through anywhere for our undercoat, our underneath coat. And all will become slightly more clear later on. So just bear with me because we have to go through the hot mess stage. And this isn't it. The hot mess is yet to come. So here's the tissue paper, now going down onto the grey glue mix in as much scrunch as we can get. So really pushing it in on itself and getting texture. That's what we need. Okay. I've got a brush, I've got a little dish here for paints, and important step is to turn this over while it's still damp and gluey and just push that down so you squash everything. Make sure it all sticks and that you flatten those creases out. So that's important. There we go. So it's still sticky, it's still damp, that's fine, because now we're going to work with it with some paint. So this could be watercolour, this could be ink, this could be acrylic, this could be anything that sort of goes liquidy with water, and so not oil paint. Anything with pigment, any powder paint, anything at all that you can make a liquidy wash or stain. So that was a burnt umber. And I want water. I want quite a bit of water. I'm just using it from this water bottle here. So taking the brush, taking the water, the paint, I'm just mixing it in to get a nice wash of colour, this brown colour. We're going grunge. we're going to grunge town, so we want brown. We don't always want brown with grunge. Grunge doesn't always mean brown. So we'll do a bit of brown. And then I'm not sure that this is liquidy enough, so I'm just going to put a bit on here. Right, so now that I've got my paper wet, I've got my paint, I'm just going to lay this down, and I just want to get the paper underneath covered. That's okay, that's sort of quite nice. I like that. I would like a bit more warmth in it. I would like happy grunge. So I'm going to go for something a little bit warm, to warm that up a wee bit. I'm going to warm it up with my burnt sienna. So we'll just put a little blob, like a pea-sized blob, in with this mix. And see if that's going to help. I would drop more water. So drop more water just to keep it liquidy. Okay, that's better. And then, okay, so you have to be a bit careful because it is still wet and it might have been nicer dried. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check, because I'm learning as well. I'm learning a new technique for me, so I want to know if it's better with a wet surface or a dry surface to start with. Colour would soak in more if it's wet, and it is working, but it's also breaking up the tissue underneath. Again, not a problem, but I want to know if it is better wet or dry. So for my own learning and for yours as well, save you the bother and the time, let's just find out. Okay, so I dried everything off. It now feels a lot drier. I just want to understand if this gives me a nicer effect, whether it sits on the top or whether it, I don't know really. Let's just find out. Oh, I just don't want any white. That's what I don't want. I want to have coloured page of texture. Grunge is all about texture and that darkened colour, that mood, that sultry, that slightly miserable side of things. Grunge does not have to mean that you're miserable. It just means you're connecting in with a side of journaling that is more autumn and winter of someone's week. It doesn't mean that it is all happy, sunny and brightly colours. This means that it's just, you know, that's the other side to life. It's the rot, it's the decay, it's the destruction. It makes way for new growth. It's the calm, it's the storm, it's after the storm, it's the sort of the carnage, the waste, the rot, the grime. It's the part of journaling which some can shy away from, but don't shy away from it, because you can make that beautiful. Soil, that's oil, that's crude oil, that's earth, that's wood, that's woodland, that's texture, that's bark, that's life, that's energy, that's hibernation, that's cocoon, that's it's cocoon, it's keeping things safe, it's a nest. Okay, so think of those, you know, grunge does not have to be negative, it does not have to be frightening. Okay, so we've done that. So the next thing I want to do is now to bring in a contrast of colour down here. I want to have some blue. So I'm going to put down this dark blue, which is Prussian blue. And I want to water that down. So I'm going to add in the water, and I'm not bothered that it's going to merge with the brown because that's going to have to happen anyway. So I just want to bring my colour here. It's a beautiful colour, isn't it? You can really see it over the top of that. So jumping back into the story of Marianne North in 1876, she's about to embark on a big journey to Borneo. She's going to Sarawak, and she's going to a place that is so remote, and she's going to be sailing up a river, and she wants to paint in the jungle. She's absolutely been bitten by the bug to find something from the tropics, something really, really inspirational that she can paint to bring home to be taken seriously in the scientific botanical world of Kew Gardens. Now, when she was 26, she was taken to Kew Gardens in London by her father, and there she met Sir William Hooker, who was the director of Kew Gardens at the time. And this is the 1800s, so it's Victorian Britain. It's big, heavy dresses, it's cold and it's dark. We don't have light bulbs, electricity, we just are candle lit, and everything is hard work. So she's at Kew Gardens in the Palm House, the most fantastic building you've ever seen. It's huge, it's made of glass, it lets in light from every angle, and it's warm. This is the most amazing place that you could go on a dull grey day such as today in England. The Palm House in Kew Gardens would be warm and tropical and an absolute delight to Marianne North, who suffers from the cold. She suffers later in life with rheumatism, so the Palm House in Kew Gardens would be her perfect place. When she's there, she's given a very special plant called Anastasia nobilis. It's a beautiful plant. It grows in Singapore. It's the only place that it comes from. This was the one plant that she wanted to see. So when she finds herself ill in Japan and in excruciating pain, there's only one place she wants to go. So why didn't she go to China? Why didn't she go to some of these other places? She had to go to Singapore because that is where she fell in love with the idea of painting this particular plant she was given by Sir William Hooker in front of her father, presented with this beautiful bunch of flowers. She had to paint it in its natural world. That's why she went to Singapore. That's why it was so important. And that's why she travelled an excruciating journey. So that is what happened. That's why she was so desperate to get to Singapore. So we've cracked that part of the story. It is dry and it's textured and it's not too bulky, but we are talking about adding snippets onto this, so it is going to get bulky. So to reduce the bulk but to keep the grunge style, I'm going to take some sandpaper to my tissue paper, and I'm going to start going over it and seeing if I can remove where there's extra bulk. So Marianne's trip to Sarawak in 1876 is of particular interest, as there's not only her description of her visit in her own journal, but that of the Rani of Sarawak, whom she stayed in Kutchning. The Rani was an English girl who, at the age of 20, had married the 42-year-old Charles Brooke, who was born in 1849 and died in 1917. He was the nephew of the first White Raja. So here she finds herself with a letter of introduction to go and stay with the Rani and the Raja. He lived in some style with 100 soldiers, a band which played every night, and about 20 men known as the officers, who came to play croquet every Tuesday. The Raja's palace, the Astana, was a brick-built structure which stood on a little hill overlooking the river and was surrounded on 3 sides by tropical forest. The house was cool and comfortable and had an excellent library with books collected by the first Raja. The bedrooms even had bathrooms attached, en suite, as the Rani rather grandly described them. The Rani was delighted to have a guest to stay, as life was undoubtedly very monotonous for her. The days passed with the same routine: lawn tennis, croquet, constitutional walks and occasional dinner parties, when the guests and music were always the same. The Rani described Marianne as tall, lean and fair, with hair hardly tinted grey, a large nose, thin lips, blue spectacles and, was said with some satisfaction, not good looking. She also made several observations about Marianne's dress. She apparently arrived sporting a troppy, very short petticoat, a high woolen jacket and high heelless Wellington boots. She had lost her high heels and replaced them with Wellington boots. Very, very sensible, I would say. Her undraped knees were mentioned several times to the Rani, obviously thought them somewhat risque. But soon everything was put right and they went on an excursion to the jungle with the Rani. They had a look at all the local flora and fauna, and before long Marianne found exactly what she was looking for and places where she would be able to paint. And after that, she had the next few days were completely focused on her painting. And after that, the two found a working friendship and they got on. No problems at all, as neither one would interfere with the other, as they both mutually understood each other's roles, and Marianne would go and stay away for days at a time painting in the jungle. Marianne was delighted to find a very unusual pitcher plant, and she painted it and wrote letters home to Kew Gardens, which later it transpired that she had found a new species, and this was later named after her as the Nepenthes northiana. And it looks like I've actually got a hole there. It looks like the little mouse has been nibbling away at some of it, so it's all quite I'm happy with it. I think it would fit into the story because you would find little mice on ships that would be sailing across to other countries, so a mouse definitely fits into the story as part of the travelling voyage and expedition. The intrepid explorer would definitely have encountered mice. I'm going to tear the page into 3 sections, and then I'm just going to get them inked up with a very crude application of ink directly from the ink pad. And if we wanted to link them together, we could link the blues together and that will all blend in and make sense, and then you could have a snippet on the blue section, or you could turn them round and just have then the variation of that, but it would be a harsh line, so you'd have to cover that up with something, and you wouldn't need that much going on there because you've got the background colour. So those are fun. Those are already fun, but they're not snippets. There's no snippets on there. That's just a background. So now we're going to add our snippets and just work out what looks nice. So I'm going to just treat them as individual pieces, which could be linked together and rolled up if I wanted, but I don't really want that. And I'll just add some ink where I feel it's needed, and just look at what colours you've got and what might pop and what might look better on the blue, what's going to work with the brown. The lighter tones might pop out a bit better on the browns. Interesting bits where you've got some folded over pieces and any lace, like this bit of lace got a bit of blackberry dye on it like that. Maybe that's interesting, or maybe it's not. Maybe it looks better overlapped with something else. So there's that idea. So to bring in a little cluster, but it's still a snippet. It's just going to get stuck down in an organised way and be a snippet roll, but be beautiful at the same time. So you could be, that's not very exciting and something that somebody would put in the bin. Although it's got a lovely fold to it. It's got a nice colours that all blend in. And if you start showcasing it on a fun background, instantly it becomes a piece of art. So we're now saying our scraps are a piece of art, and we're giving them a home somewhere where they can be truly appreciated, just like Marianne would have done with her paintings. We're putting them in our own little gallery, collecting them all together and keeping them for the future. And that is the whole premise of preserving your work and showing it off. We're just showing off even the most grungy of scraps that others would just not look at twice. And that's what Marianne did when she found some of these plants. I mean, some of them were really unattractive, but she made them beautiful with her colours and her vibrancy. We're taking something that just shouldn't have been anything special and making it special. A destroyed piece of fabric is going to just come and live here and be part of the art. And when you've got your scraps in arrangement that you're happy with, your unsung hero scraps that were just normal pieces of paper which have just ended up with artistic applications or been in the right place at the right time and got paint splatters over them. Things that they're not ephemera, they're not vintage, they're not exciting, they're not something that costs anything, they're worthless, they really were. We are now offering them up as unsung heroes to become their own masterpiece, to become their own piece of work, to highlight themselves in something that will then end up being showcased and viewed by many people. How awesome. The unsung hero is the mouse. How about that? And without the mouse, we wouldn't have the cat, because there's a huge history about cats being on board the ships to control the mice. And then that's how we started to domesticate our cats. Okay, so here we have the snippets. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to prevent them from moving. Now I'm happy with their arrangement. I'm just going to tether them down with a little bit of glue. And then I'm going to run them through the sewing machine, but I'm going to keep it so basic. I'm just going to run a single stitch through the middle and tether them all into place. Okay, so here they are, 3 snippet strips that can be used as belly bands, tucks, cut into, you could just individually cut them, or have 3 in the middle, be like that. And then they can be embellished with other ideas, so they would just be background pieces. So here's a sort of plain, but still got the splats, it all works. And I could just bring in one of these and see which one we like. And then perhaps that could live and be stuck on that bit there and be a tuck. What I'm going to do is just going to remove the bottom piece. This time I'm just going to let the scrap overhang. And then the scrap will poke out the top. Yep, I like it. Okay, I'm just going to stick this down completely on this panel here. I'm going to put glue on the bottom edge here and the top edge there. And flip it over and glue that down. I'm just going to fussy tear him out now. Okay, we're just going to put the little mouse here and he can come and live there. A silk bed here. And that's quite nice. We'll trim that bit off there. And then it's a posh mouse because it's been hanging out with Marianne North on her adventures, keeping her company on her ship as she goes over to some of these places where it's all a bit of a worry. A little friend aboard the ship. And then here we can add other things. It's perfectly fine to then add stamps and things. It's another little starting point, isn't it? So that's what's good about that. And it's also a pocket as well, so we can add other things. I got there. I've done it. That is my deconstructed snippet roll for today, with the grunge theme, and then 2 more to play with elsewhere in the journal. And I hope that was good and fun for you. And if you're enjoying the videos, they're all in the Dephemerember playlist on this channel. Do have a look, and you can watch back at all the past videos and everything else that's in the playlist as well. Go and see, there's plenty for you, all levels and abilities and ideas, plenty of ephemera scrap ideas, scrap busting, and not that this was scrap busting, this was more showcasing, but you never know what to do with some of these scraps, so let's make them a feature and enjoy them and make them, you know, make art from nothing. And if you're enjoying listening to me, then you might like to listen to the podcast, which comes out twice a week. The link is in the description below. Okay guys, thanks very much for watching, and above everything else, just slow down and make crafting time for you. Bye bye now.